In 1993, the world was introduced to Magic the Gathering, and ever since, collectible card games have been a staple of pop culture. Games like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and Hearthstone have become household names in the world of TCG and CCGs, but among them were a slew of games that have long been cancelled, forgotten, or simply lost in the shuffle. When you think of action heroes who have spanned generations and stood the test of time, James Bond would be at the top of that list. To date, there are 40 books, 26 movies, and countless video games and tabletop games based on the classy Secret Agent. Now, while there are seemingly endless amounts of ways to get your Bond fix, one game came and went like a ship in the night. And no, we're not talking about the James Bond matching card game, but rather, whatever happened to the James Bond 007 CCG?
I admire your luck, Mr.
Bond. James Bond.
The James Bond collectible card game was first released in November of 1995 through Target Games and Heartbreaker Hobbies. The original set release was called GoldenEye and featured characters and material from every James Bond movie up until that point. It even included the hotly contested Thunderball, which went through some legal issues in the 60s due to copyright claims.
I think you got the point.
The original set featured 207 cards, although there are sources who claim it was closer to 217 or even 231. Cards range from Bond villains to support characters, gadgets, and several iterations of Bond himself. The objective of the James Bond CCG game worked similar to a movie. The mission was to send Bond on assignments to overcome various plots laid out before him. Each plot was worth a number of plot points. The first player to collect the predetermined number of plot points won the game. Each deck consisted of at least 60 cards. At least 2 out of every 10 cards must be a Bond card, while at least 3 out of every 10 cards must be a plot. The remainder of the deck was filled with action cards. To get a game started, each player shuffled their deck to create a draw pile, then discarded the top card. Your side of the play area consisted of 2 zones, the Agency Zone and the Plot Zone. Your Agency Zone is where you place your Bond cards into play, giving them equipment and then awaiting assignment. The Plot Zone is where you placed all of your plot cards as you drew them. This was also the zone where your opponent's Bond cards go on assignment. After you peacefully determine who goes first, according to the official rulebook, the first player draws 7 cards from their draw pile. If there are any plot cards in your hand, you place at least 1 face-up in your plot zone. This becomes your main plot. From here, the goal was to basically build your movie by adding more cards to your main plot. The game flowed in the following 7 steps: draw cards, advance the plot, develop subplots. This is where you placed obstacle plots onto your main plot cards. Henchman attack, where your henchman plot cards could attack an opponent, Bond, or personality. Assignment briefing, where you could place Bond, personality, or Q cards into your agency zone. On assignment, where you could now place one of your Bond cards on an assignment and try to overcome a main plot in an opponent's plot zone. If Bond was able to match or beat the requirements of the plot, you could take those cards as a reward. However, if Bond was unable to overcome the plot cards, he returned to the agency zone in defeat. If a Bond or personality is defeated more than once in a game, they are permanently discarded. The round would then close by an optional discarding of 1 card from the hand. The first player to reach the predetermined plot point number was considered the victor. Plot points were earned by placing plots in your plot zone, as well as overcoming plots in other players' plot zones. The bullet icon on the plot card told how many plot points the card was worth. When one of your plots is overcome by another player, you lose those points. For plots you overcame, each bullet icon was worth 2 plot points. While the game has earned itself a dedicated fan base still to this day, the original release was panned by critics. The gameplay mechanics were criticized as being too one-sided, and the combat system earned a reputation as being called pointless. A review from Arcane magazine in 1995 gave the game a 5 out of 10, commenting, "It sounds great, but in practice very little gets done. It's too hard to get all the necessary icons and scores together. Instead, each player builds up his own plots until he has the required number, at which point he declares himself a winner. It's more of a race than a game of strategy." An expansion to the game titled Villains and Women was scheduled for release in 1996, but this set never materialized. However, thanks to a dedicated fan base of the game, the expansion was released several times by the community. In fact, several fan-made expansions have surfaced from the community ever since. Today, a reboot of the game was released in 2019 by Upper Deck Entertainment called Legendary, a James Bond deck building game. The gameplay mechanics are intact, and the game even came with its own playmat to highlight the play areas. As for any sort of digital version of the game, that is yet to be seen. However, if you need to get your James Bond fix, a digital version of the James Bond role-playing game with all 5 of its expansions can be found as a mod in Tabletop Simulator. While the James Bond CCG never saw the commercial success it was looking for, it can be remembered for an interesting concept and gameplay. In essence, you were building a movie with your opponent and sending Bond from different generations on an adventure. The card design may not have been perfect, but the concept was surely unique.